Sure. So if you are joining the exchange webinars for the first time today, we are a social impact network of all sectors where our mission is to activate local governments to implement GSI in North America equitably. And along with our mission, you can advance. We have three pillars of change, our theory of change, and the first being leadership. We are the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange, so we encourage our members to take on leadership roles, and there are several opportunities to do that. One being in the this webinar capacity and presenting on your work as it aligns with our framework of GSI practice. Um, there's also opportunities to serve on small committees and task force as various projects pop up within the exchange. Um, and usually the bulk of the reason why folks join is for our programming, our implementation. So what you're a part of right now, our bi-monthly webinars, our weekly learning circles, training courses, uh, and various ways to engage online. And that last pillar being evidence. So we do want to make the evidentiary case for GSI North America. So we have a GSI library that houses several presentations that come out of our programming, like you'll see today, as well as case studies, reports, manuals that our members have contributed to the library that is accessible to the public, even though our members are the only contributors. And we also have other tools like the GSI Impact Hub that we hope you will check out on the gsiimpacthub.org. And you can advance. We like to show this map of where our members are located around North America. So you'll see we have several members in Canada, in the Midwest and Northwest, and we are actively recruiting in all regions. And while we have over 100 member organizations, we have over 700 individual members because we do not limit the number of people that can join per organization, specifically to break down those silos that happen within departments. And we want to encourage all those involved in GSI efforts to be a part of the discussion and join the exchange. So there is no limit to who can join from your organization if you are interested. And you're welcome to email me. You can advance the slide. You're welcome to email me or send me a message in the chat if you have any specific membership questions, and I will be available to answer them for you. Yeah, thank you. I'll pass it on to Gideon from City Parks Alliance.
Thanks so much, Nina. Tracy, you can advance. All right. The folks you'll be hearing from today are part of something we call the Parks and Green Stormwater Infrastructure Initiative. And this is a joint partnership between the City Parks Alliance, the Green Infrastructure Leadership Exchange, and our friends at the U.S. Water Alliance. So just a minute on who the City Parks Alliance is. We are a membership organization. We've been around about 20 years or so. We're closing in on almost 500 organizational members around the country and in Canada and a little bit overseas, represent about 12,000 or so individuals. Our mission is to promote the role of parks in building more equitable, resilient, and thriving cities. And we got interested in this topic of green stormwater infrastructure in parks for a number of reasons, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we are halfway through the third year of this partnership. Which it has included 9 cities. You can see all the cool public agencies and nonprofits that have been involved with this program through this cohort of folks from both the parks and recreation world as well as the stormwater management world. And there's little stars to represent all the cities that we've been working with. And you'll be hearing from 2 of those places today in Houston and Raleigh. Next slide, Tracy. And I should have mentioned that the program has been funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation these 3 years, and they've been a tremendous supporter of this work, which has been great. So why? Why do we care about GSI in parks? Well, As you guys probably are experiencing in your own cities, storms are becoming more intense, more frequent, and more unpredictable. And we need our urban infrastructure to adapt to help to try to meet those demands. Parks offer some of the largest publicly owned green spaces in our cities, and many of them are along waterways or near them. And they could offer some ideal spaces for GSI. Um, we know that green stormwater infrastructure in particular is incredibly valuable for reducing flooding, for runoff, helping to deal with heat and water quality issues, supporting biodiversity, improving the ecological function of our lands, and has all of those things in turn, when you add them to the recreation benefits of our parks, can help lower healthcare costs. So lots of good public policy reasons for why we're interested in GSI, particularly the opportunity that our parks and urban green spaces represent for adding more GSI in our cities. Next slide, Tracy. But there's some other additional reasons as well that are compelling if those aren't compelling enough. And that is that historically, marginalized communities in our cities have limited access to parks and face greater environmental risks, particularly from flooding. So GSI can provide more green space, offer flood protection, and also the implementation of green stormwater infrastructure through both the capital creation of it as well as the ongoing maintenance of it can support jobs and workforce development. Um, you see this amazing picture of Rodney Cook Jr. Park in Atlanta, great example of all of those benefits. Um, but we've also learned through the work we've been doing with the cohort in this initiative that it's very important for cities to think about anti-displacement and long-term maintenance funding for these facilities to have a lasting impact. And like any other infrastructure improvements that you put in your cities, you want to be thinking about what that does to the value of the land around them, and also how are you going to maintain them so that they continue to function over the years? Next slide, Tracy. So, despite the incredible opportunity that our parks represent for having more GSI in our cities, there are a lot of obstacles for why that doesn't happen as frequently as you would think it would. And we kind of dug into these the first couple of years of the initiative and created some resources to help city leaders, policymakers, and practitioners like yourselves make the case for why parks are great places to think about adding more GSI. And we call it a win-win for urban resilience. So this is a two-pager that you can find on our website, cityparksalliance.org. If you look in our Parks and Green Stormwater Infrastructure Initiative section, that helps make that case. And it also gets into, Tracy, if you move to the next slide, a second report that we did in more detail, which we called Nature-Based Solutions for Managing Stormwaters in Parks, which provides 17 case studies of example projects and partnerships for how to do it. Examples from all over the country that really get into the what we call the co-benefits of locating GSI in parks. So whether it's some of the things we've been talking about flood reduction and protecting vulnerable communities, improving water quality, advancing environmental justice, workforce development opportunities, as well as some cultural changes in your cities about how you all work together between agencies, with nonprofit partners, and even with the private sector, and particularly tapping into potentially new funding streams, new sources of capital funding, and perhaps even O&M funding to make that happen. In the end, when we can build these facilities, when they function and deliver these benefits, when they're well maintained, what we find is that they create community trust and they sort of go through this virtual cycle of building more support in our community for more nature-based solutions, whether that's from stakeholders who live in the neighborhoods, whether it's from environmental advocates, and especially your elected leaders and policymakers who may need to be convinced about thinking about this infrastructure in a different way. In the third year of the program, we're really focusing on what adaptive management for maintaining these spaces looks like. And we've been talking about these topics of maintenance and we'll be talking about workforce development. So last month we heard from the city of Austin about the partnerships they have in place and their journey. Why have they gone down this path, which is not necessarily easy to figure out how to collaborate together. And in this webinar, you'll be hearing from folks in Raleigh and in Houston, particularly on the partnerships and agreements in place for how they maintain these facilities and the evolution of that over time in their cities. Next month, we'll be hearing from folks speaking more specifically to the workforce development component of that. Next slide, Tracy. And for those of you who have the opportunity, if you haven't already registered, our Greater and Greener Conference is going to be in Austin, Texas in just less than 2 months. We're going to have an amazing session on this topic with folks from Raleigh, folks from Tucson, and folks from Austin. And we have some great mobile workshops to get out into the city to see some GSI in Austin's parks as well. So early bird has expired, but we still have about 300 slots left that are open. So folks should definitely register if you haven't heard about the conference and you have the budget to make it there. Next slide, Tracy. So with that, I am going to introduce our Houston team, Trent and Melissa, who have been now part of this um, cohort of practitioners who we've been learning from for about 2.5 years or so, and we've tapped them to give various presentations and tell their story, which is a really, really great one. After they go, you'll be hearing from the Raleigh team as well, and a very different story and a different model for how they're doing maintenance for GSI in their parks. So Trent Rondeau is the Conservation and Maintenance Director at the Houston Parks Board, which is a citywide parks nonprofit in Houston. They're one of the best examples of such organizations in the country. Trent's been with the Parks Board since 2014, directing their day-to-day and long-term stewardship of the Bio Greenway system, which is an incredibly impressive project. It includes more than 117 miles of trails, 3,800 acres of green space. And Trent will give you kind of an overview about Bio Greenways, but it's an incredible citywide linkage of the bayous and greenways and trails around Houston. Trent's background includes another 15 years with the Parks Board prior to 2014, where he did project and construction management, parkland acquisition, GIS, and community partnerships. And prior to that, for a decade, he was with the Indianapolis Parks and Recreation Department as a park planner and project manager. He's currently serving a 3-year term on the Board of Regents for the Park and Recreation Maintenance Management School, run by our friends at NRPA, and he has a bachelor's of landscape architecture and bachelor's of science and environmental design from Ball State in Indiana. I think there was a very famous alum there named David Letterman, Trent. I don't know if you guys went to
That
school
is
together.
correct.
All right. uh, I also want to introduce our other partner from the cohort representing Houston, Melissa Meyer, who's a PE and holds a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Purdue, another Indiana native. 19 years of experience in the Houston area land development and public works projects. So she joined a very special and important public agency, the Harris County Flood Control District, 9 years ago, coming over from the private sector. Harris County, I think, is maybe one of the 3 largest counties in America. It encompasses all of Houston and a lot of its suburbs. But she came there to manage projects under the Flood Control District's Federal Projects Department, but now serves as their deputy director of their CDBG DR MIT program. So Melissa will have to tell us a little more about that. And I did not know this, Melissa, but she also plays cello in the Houston Civic Symphony as someone who took 8 years of classical piano lessons. That is very, very impressive. So a lot of parks and stormwater people are Renaissance people. You have to be in this business to be so collaborative and work with folks across disciplines. So with that, I am going to, Tracy, we can exit this presentation and we'll hand it over. I think Trent is going first.
No, Melissa's going
Oh,
first.
Melissa's
Yeah,
going first. All right.
I
You,
would. Thank you so much for the introduction. Again, my name is Melissa Meyer, and my role has actually changed. I'm now the director of the CDBG program here at Harris County Flood Control District. I am working this program, and we are delivering about $860 million worth of infrastructure improvements that's funded by the U.S. Department of Houston and Urban Development, also known as HUD. And those funds are administered to the Flood Control District by the Texas General Land Office at the state level. But before that, I worked on federally funded projects that were funded through the Army Corps of Engineers. And throughout that design and construction, we partnered really closely with Houston Parks Board on our design and construction so our infrastructure could include recreational benefits. So for this presentation, we're a very unique entity. So I wanted to give a brief overview of the Flood Control District and what we do before I hand it over to Trent. And I'm going to be talking about our partnership and how our infrastructure works. And I also briefly wanted to kind of touch on the maintenance of our infrastructure. Sorry, I skipped one. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. So Harris County Flood Control District really oversees one of the most comprehensive and complex stormwater management systems in the nation. We're one of the largest and most populated and also most flood-prone places in the United States, Harris County, Texas. And we just really are a county shaped by water. Our mission is to plan, implement, and maintain flood risk reduction projects guided by community and natural values. It's really complex work that takes time, coordination, and care. And we are just laser focused on advancing flood risk reduction and maintenance efforts across the county. And by moving projects from planning all the way to construction, we work tirelessly to strengthen flood resilience for residents both today and in the future. The Harris County Flood Control District was established by the Texas legislature and we were established in 1939 after two devastating back-to-back floods hit the Houston area in 1929 and 1935. The picture you see here is downtown from 1935. There was about 8 feet of water in the downtown area. So that really was the reason for starting our organization. And today we're governed by the Harris County Commissioners Court, who also governs the county as a whole. For nearly 90 years, we've invested billions of dollars in flood risk reduction projects throughout the county. Creating change, improving quality of life, and building a more resilient future. And how do we get all of this important work done? We do so with a variety of funding sources, including the Flood Control District's dedicated property tax, the 2018 bond program that was passed by Harris County voters after Hurricane Harvey hit the area, and of course, we have a wide range of federal, state, and local partnerships. So our drainage infrastructure is very extensive. Not only do we manage hundreds of stormwater detention basins, we also maintain more miles of channel than a lot of states have actual highways. In fact, we have 2,500 miles of channel, which is approximately the distance from New York to California. And this expansive channel system moves stormwater out to Galveston Bay. And during heavy rain events, these channels do start to reach capacity. And that's when our stormwater detention basins that we've built throughout the county step in and temporarily hold back stormwater, which helps reduce the risk of flooding. With that in mind, it's also important to know that Harris County is comprised of a vast system of bayous, tributaries, and other waterways that make up 23 unique watersheds. A watershed are designated geographic areas where all the stormwater in that region ultimately drains to the same bayou or body of water, and then eventually it does make it out to the Galveston Bay. So we do have a lot of work here at the Flood Control District currently, and that means we have a lot of opportunities for partnerships. Since we are the Harris County Flood Control District, we don't typically build trails with the types of funding that we use. However, we partner with other entities that do. And one of those entities that we work closely with is the Houston Parks Board. So once we have a detention basin or channel improvements in the grounds, an entity such as Houston Parks Board could come in and build trails for recreation. For instance, if we need to build a channel conveyance improvement, we also need to build a maintenance access for that channel. And sometimes we need ramps to go under existing bridges to access our channels. Because we partner with entities like Houston Parks Board, we'll often design a maintenance ramp as ADA compliant. So future trails could connect to this ramp, so it could be also accessed for pedestrian or cycling access. So when we're designing our projects, we keep those kind of partnerships in mind ahead of time. And these partnerships are really important and really fruitful because we're able to build infrastructure that really is a multi-benefit investment to the community. Integrating trails with flood control infrastructure allows one public investment to deliver both flood resilience, recreation, and mobility benefits for the community. And projects, when they include recreational amenities, build stronger public support for flood mitigation investments and demonstrate visible community values. I want to quickly define what a channel conveyance improvement is and explain how they help with our flood risk reduction. Simply put, channel conveyance improvements are engineered modifications or channels to a waterway that help the channel to move more stormwater, especially during a heavy rainfall. And this is usually just accomplished by widening or deepening the channel, and often a combination of both. You can see in this slide here some trails off to the side. And again, that's not something that we typically build since our funding mechanisms are usually specific to just flood control or drainage infrastructure. But, our projects sure do leave the county with some really good space for recreation. I also want to take a moment to further explain how our stormwater detention basins work with flood risk reduction. All of our detention basins work with gravity. We don't use any pumps or anything electronic. These basins really help reduce the risk of flooding, but also, again, they provide opportunities for community and recreational spaces. So when there's a heavy rainfall, water levels in our channels will start to rise. And when a channel reaches its carrying capacity, stormwater can overflow into the detention basin through a structure typically known as a weir. It's usually concrete. You can see it just about in the middle of the slide here. And weirs are built across a channel specifically to help direct the flow of that stormwater into the detention basin. And while the channel conveyance improvements help move the stormwater more efficiently out of an area, the stormwater detention basins hold that stormwater, but only temporarily. We strategically construct stormwater detention basins where they will intercept excess stormwater to help keep it from overwhelming the channels. And detention basins will temporarily hold the stormwater for about 24 to 48 hours until the waters in the channel recede back down. And once water levels in the channel go down, the stormwater stored in the detention basin flows back through gravity, through pipes back into the channel, and eventually make its way out into Galveston Bay. I do want to mention that the Flood Control District is what we call a no adverse impact agency. And that just means that we do not allow our projects to reduce flooding risks for one area while increasing the flooding risks somewhere else. And that's why we really need these stormwater detention basins. And they're typically built before or at the same time as channel conveyance improvements to basically offset the channel conveyance improvements. and to make sure that we're preventing any unintended impacts elsewhere. And all stormwater detention basins essentially serve the same purpose, that temporary storage of excess stormwater, but they can be designed differently. Some are built as one large compartment, like the examples shown here, while others are made up of several compartments that function together as one stormwater detention basin. Individual compartments or an entire basin can be a mix of wet bottom or dry bottom, and that's exactly what it sounds like. Wet bottom compartments have a permanent pool of water and are able to store have storage above the permanent pool of water during heavy rainfall events, whereas dry bottom compartments are typically lined with grass and designed to drain completely between rain events. And then there's just one other piece of the flood control district puzzle that I want to briefly discuss before I hand it over to Trent with the Parks Board, and that is maintenance. Maintenance for us is boots on the ground, literally. It's crews clearing debris, repairing channel slopes, mowing acres and acres of grass, planting native species, and fixing what storms have worn down in our infrastructure. And it's just muddy, physical, and really hands-on work, and it rarely makes headlines, but it can literally be the reason that homes don't flood when that next storm hits. This work really does touch every corner of our channel network. Back in November 2024, Harris County voters said yes to something that's been a game changer for how we care for this county's flood control system. And that is the voters approved an additional $100 million in annual funding, all dedicated to the maintenance of flood control infrastructure. And that vote gave us something we had not had in decades, just dependable and dedicated funding for maintenance. Before that passed, we spent about $60 million annually in maintenance and operations. And with 2,500 miles of channel plus basins, that money goes very, very quickly. So this additional $100 million is really helpful. We've been able to invest over $17 million just in equipment for our maintenance fleet. We've added excavators, skid steers that'll help us dig, lift, and haul. We've also got boats and amphibious vehicles that help us reach difficult areas. And these are tools that really help our crews perform critical maintenance work efficiently, even in toughest conditions. In the past 12 months, we've restored more than 100 miles of channel. That's a little further than the distance from Houston to Beaumont, which probably doesn't mean much to most of you on this presentation, but it's a lot. And we've cleared more than 280,000 linear feet of sediment, which is the distance from Houston to Galveston. And in the past year, we have removed more than 50,000 cubic yards of debris from our channel systems. And that's about 3,000 dump trucks worth. And this is trash and debris that would be in and around our waterways and otherwise near our trails. Thank you so much. That's a brief overview of the flood control district. And I am now going to hand it over to Trent to talk a little bit about Houston Parks Board. And I'll be happy to take any questions after his presentation. I've also included my email here on the slide if anyone wants to reach out if you think of something later. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Trent Rondo, Houston Parks Board. As Gideon mentioned, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're kind of a poorly named park conservancy. We've been around since 1976, and we work to increase the amount of park space and improve that park space all around the Houston region. We have done work across all different geographic areas within Houston. What sets us apart is that we are not tied to a single jurisdiction. We work with many different public agencies and other partners as well. And our work really covers everything from early planning all the way through land acquisition and projects, conservation and maintenance work as well. And as I mentioned, we partner with many different city agencies, county agencies, state groups as well, and then the private sector. And some of the challenges, as Melissa talked about, our rainfall events here in Houston can be rather impactful, not only to the flood control district, but to the green space and the parks that exist around the city. Some of these you would consider to be rather rare in quantity or impact, but the fact that we had so many in multiple years really close together was quite a challenge. And this is just an example on the image in the left. You see, this is Brays Bayou. You can see the trail passing underneath the bridge, but in a matter of 2 days during Hurricane Harvey, water level rose more than 20 feet along this particular segment of the bayou. Uh, Obviously, that has a tremendous impact across the entire city. But for us as a maintainer of green space, it does create a bit of challenge. It's one of those I generally say I don't worry about things I can't control. I certainly can't control the flooding. I know it's coming, so we have a plan in place to make sure that we're able to respond to whatever disasters are out there. And part of that is working through various scaled solutions to try and minimize impacts, but also where we can work in conjunction with the land and other agencies to put improvements in place that will minimize our challenges. This is an example of one of the detention basins that Melissa talked about. So this is along Sims Bayou. So the bayou is actually up here in the very top of the picture, and here's the concrete weir. So when the water level in the bayou comes up, it spills over into this large detention basin. This basin has been here since probably 20 years ago, but we are just now wrapping up construction, adding all of the recreational amenities around this detention basin. So Gideon talked about parks being a perfect place where you can incorporate GSI. In our case, we're actually creating parks within GSI. It works both ways depending on the scale. And the multi-purpose part of this is what really becomes the focus of our organization, that we're able to work along land that flood control has for their purposes and introduce many different park and recreation amenities that will offer many different annual benefits. This really goes back to more than 100 years ago when the park plan for Houston was to take advantage of all of our major bayous to create linear parkways. And over the years, we had developed segments along there. We launched a big campaign in 2012 to finish that out so we would have 150 miles of hike and bike trails along our 9 major bayous inside the city of Houston. So that's that gray background image on the map. $220 million campaign that was sold to the voters and the elected officials, the development community, based on the annual benefits. And the benefits can be many different things depending on how you're impacted by green space or how you utilize green space. And the enhanced property tax base, I pulled that wedge out because that becomes an important funding feature for our maintenance program. So again, the campaign to create the Buy Greenway system was a $220 million campaign, $100 million in public funding, and the Parks Board then committed to bring another $120 million to the table. We are 99.9% complete with the system. Will be done shortly. Part of that drive to raise private funds was a commitment to our major donors that whatever gets built with their funding would be maintained at a very high level. So we created maintenance standards for all the various amenities and green spaces that would be included within the BioGreenway system. And then you start talking about how do you pay for this maintenance? It couldn't be part of the bond money because that was restricted for construction. Departmental budgets within the public agencies are stretched thin enough. We couldn't use tax reinvestment funds. Those are restricted for development as well. And the private funding wasn't really an option because the private sector loves to give money to build things, but not so much to maintain those things. But Texas does have a state law that allows a local government organization, sorry, say local government agency like the city of Houston to give a grant to a nonprofit like the Houston Parks Board for economic development purposes. And the way we talk about this is if you have high quality parks that are maintained in a very attractive nature, it increases the values surrounding properties. Based on that increased property value, there's enhanced tax revenue that comes in to the city and to the county. So it's not a new tax, it's not an additional tax, that's not a change in the tax rate. It's just saying if your property was X before the greenway was developed, the value of your property goes up a little bit. There's that enhanced tax revenue that comes in. The city then sets aside a portion of that additional tax revenue into a separate account to give a grant to the Houston Parks Board for us to do the park maintenance, the greenway maintenance. And that's what ensures that we continue to maintain the parks and green spaces at a very high level. So we have an 80-year agreement. We call it the 380 agreement because it was modeled after Chapter 380 in state law, and that covers our operating costs, all of our routine stuff that we do, staff and vehicles and all of that. There's an additional 20% that's set aside in a maintenance reserve for us to do major flood cleanup and unanticipated repairs. This is what really sets us apart from many public agencies in that if a public agency only has an operating account and then you have a massive flood event or tornado or some other type of natural disaster, you end up eating up your operating dollars in order to recover from that event. In this case, that extra 20% that's set aside allows us to spend those funds for the cleanup as opposed to using up our operating funds. And then we also have a capital replacement reserve which is in place for the long-term life cycle replacement when those recreational amenities wear out. And the way this works is each year we get the grant funds for the operating and the maintenance reserve. At the end of each fiscal year, any funds left over in those two buckets go into the capital replacement reserve bucket. There's actually multiple different agreements in place that allow all of this to happen. So there's a 2018 interlocal hike and bike trail agreement between flood control and the city that allows the city to build trails, or in this case, the Parks Board working on behalf of the city to build trails on flood control property. There's a 2013 economic development, the 380 agreement that funds our maintenance program between the city and the Parks Board. And then the Parks Board and Harris County Flood Control District have an access agreement that permits us to legally be on their property to do that maintenance. And the maintenance covers all of the traditional park maintenance that you would expect: mowing the grass, picking up trash, graffiti abatement, forestry work, drainage work. All of that is done as part of our maintenance program. In addition, we also do conservation work. So one of the unique features about being located along the bayous is that there are hundreds of miles of opportunity then for us to do natural habitat, either creation or restoration of prairies and wetlands and forest areas all along the bayou system. These are just some small examples. So again, Melissa's dealing with things on a detention basin scale. We tend to do things on a much smaller scale. So we're taking traditional backslope swales or small swales like in the top left, and we're creating planted wetland features within those swales. The one in the top middle, that is a small detention area that collects water from an adjoining parking lot. It was originally put in as a turf detention area. We have now created a much nicer wetland feature there, bioswale. The examples on the right, those are wetland areas that were created in large turf areas that just were poorly drained, always held water, always a struggle to mow. We were able to create detention, small wetland features in those areas. We did get a grant from National Estuary Program to create 8 more wetland features around the Bio-Greenway system. We're also getting some other grant funds. The great thing is that we're able to leverage the funds that we get from the city through the 380 agreement to get grant dollars so we can expand the work that we do. In our conservation work, we rely on a combination of staff. We do a lot of work with our partners. We also do some contracted work, and this fall we'll be starting what we call a Bio-Greenways Academy, where we will go through an education program to train volunteers so we can then further expand our reach. And with that, I will wrap up my presentation.
But I am happy to introduce our Raleigh presenters today. Sally Hoyt being on the board of the directors for the exchange, as well as the committee chair for our upcoming annual meeting in Raleigh in this May. So pulling a lot of duties. She's the Stormwater Plans Review Supervisor and GSI Advocate for Raleigh Stormwater. She has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Georgia Tech and over 25 years of experience with stormwater design, watershed planning, and managing stormwater programs. And as well on her team is Barbara Maranta. She's the planning and asset manager for Raleigh Stormwater. She develops programs and partnerships to improve water quality and promote healthy natural resources. She is committed to designing, constructing, and maintaining GSI to support sustainable growth for the community. In her spare time, Barbara enjoys gardening and biking the Greenway trails with her husband and 2 children. And lastly, we have Neil Weisenbaker. He's the Green Stormwater Infrastructure Operations Superintendent for the City of Raleigh. He's committed to delivering GSI maintenance for enhanced co-benefits such as water quality, wildlife habitat, and community well-being within an urban context. Known for his leadership and collaborative approach, he works closely with teams and stakeholders to support the city's vision for vibrant, equitable green spaces.
Good afternoon or morning, everyone. Next slide. So I'll be getting us kicked off by talking about the shared interests between our Parks Department and our Stormwater Department, and then handing it over to Barbara and then Neil. Next slide. So just a little bit about Raleigh to get you oriented. We are about 500,000 people in our city, but we're part of a growing urban area. Depending on which metric you look at, we're maybe the 3rd fastest growing city in the US. We are seeing a lot of development these days. In terms of our stormwater context, which really impacts why we're doing green stormwater infrastructure, our entire city drains to the Neuse River, which drains out to the Atlantic coast. And that river is nutrient sensitive. So we are under fairly strict water quality regulations to associated with development to address that nutrient sensitivity. But we do not have combined sewers. Yay. And so we are not under a consent decree or any other regulatory mechanism that forces us to do GSI or volume reduction. So in terms of most of the green stormwater infrastructure we are doing is voluntary. We do have local flooding concerns, maybe not to the scale of Houston, but we have a couple of local creeks that have some historic floodplain development. So that's something we continue to deal with, is the flooding impacts on those properties. Next slide. So our Parks Department and our Stormwater Department have been working together for a number of years. we really have a lot of shared goals and objectives, as you can see here. So these align very well with the green stormwater infrastructure work, in terms of those stormwater goals that we have in terms of water quality and flooding, but also our goals in terms of sustainability and education and that sort of thing. And you can see in this map, we have been distributing stormwater control measures, including green stormwater infrastructure, throughout our park system, throughout the city. And that's an ongoing process. Next slide. So our mechanisms for installing green stormwater infrastructure in parks have evolved over time. Initially, 20 years ago, this voluntary by our Parks Department to water infrastructure as part of the sustainability of the parks projects. The next phase we moved into is stormwater providing funding for some projects through a program we call Raleigh Rainwater Rewards, or R3. And this is a program where we provide funding not just to parks projects, but also to private residences and to commercial businesses to for green stormwater infrastructure that isn't associated with development. So things that are above and beyond regulatory requirements. So this is an example at John Chavis Memorial Park where we paid to install some Silva cells. And then and that voluntary GSI by parks was in many different parks. And then now we've moved into a different phase where we actually have a GSI policy, which I'll be speaking about in the next slide. And we have dedicated funding for GSI and city projects. We have currently between $500,000 and $750,000 per year to spend on GSI in conjunction with city CIP projects. Next slide. So our GSI policy is really an evaluation policy that requires all land disturbing city projects to evaluate the incorporation of GSI. And there's several objectives of this policy. So two of them are here. So one is to use GSI instead of gray infrastructure for compliance. So, and that's something that Stormwater doesn't fund, the department funds, but we've seen parks do this. We've seen fire stations do this. Basically increasing those multiple benefits from GSI. But then we also are looking to provide those benefits beyond what's required. And so that's when stormwater funding can come into play. We are also looking to increase the knowledge throughout our city CIP managers about GSI so that they themselves can become advocates for identifying GSI in various projects and showcase GSI through these cities projects to be examples for the greater community, the development community. You'll see throughout our slides today, we're highlighting some photos and graphics from some of our different parks projects. So we look at GSI kind of the whole scale, where sometimes it's a large scale ecosystem enhancement, such as this project that's under design, that's an old public works yard we're doing stream restoration with some other GSI that's very, large scale, thinking about really a restoration project. But then we also do small scale things that are maybe just treating, a small chunk of roadway or that sort of thing. So we kind of think of GSI both as these like big picture ideas and these specific devices. Next slide. And so our stormwater group, and I'll mention that our stormwater program is funded by a stormwater utility that's charged to properties in the city based on their impervious area. And about the majority of our customers are residential, but because of the size of properties, the majority of our funding comes from commercial properties. This is an example of some of the sites where we've installed GSI throughout the city. And so, as I mentioned before, we'll fund that above and beyond or non-regulatory green stormwater infrastructure. And so we're really looking to how to insert that in these different projects. And I will say that, you know, we've worked with a variety of different departments, but the our best working relationship, our most productive working relationship is with Raleigh Parks. And I think that has to do with our aligned values, but it also has to do with the parks having more flexibility and ability to have things above ground, as opposed to, say, a fire station or something like that. So we really see a lot of this occurring in our parks. And then Barbara and Neil will be talking about how we work on the GSI funding piece. Barbara?
Hi, thanks, Sally. Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Maranta, the Planning and Asset Manager at Raleigh Stormwater. And in my role, I oversee GSI funding and our asset management programs. I'm really thankful to work with our talented and enthusiastic staff, including Neil and Sally, committed to the long-term success of GSI. So as Sally mentioned, Raleigh Stormwater helps fund design and construction of GSI for all city departments. And as we funded more GSI, it became apparent that these departments really could use assistance with maintenance over the long term. You know, many of these devices were in parks, and it was really stretching parks crews to incorporate specialized maintenance into their regular routines. So in 2020, Stormwater started an asset management program to assist with ongoing inspection and maintenance. The goal of this program is to make the best use of resources, to extend the life of stormwater assets, and support healthy natural resources. And sometimes making the best use of resources means figuring out what partnerships you need to make it successful. And this program is a little unique in that we have a strong partnership with our Parks Department and with our Transportation Department. So we do fund some positions in parks committed to GSI maintenance, and Neil is going to talk more about that. And they really bring a lot of expertise to the table that we in Stormwater don't have, all the horticulture expertise, for example. And then we also fund positions in transportation who maintain stormwater conveyance, and they help out in cases where we need inspection, some specialized repairs on GSI. So the next couple slides, we'll talk a little bit more about the kinds of work we do and then the agreement that we have in place with the various departments. Next slide, Neil. Thanks. Okay, so across the city, we have 128 city-owned stormwater control measures in GSI. The majority of these are on Parks property. And Parks has been a great partner. They also have a very high interest in successful maintenance, since many of these are highly visible and considered, you know, amenities for the community. So, and we have a lot more devices coming. You know, Sally mentioned our GSI policy. So we are anticipating 30 or 40 new devices over the next 3 years coming online. So that's a lot of extra work coming our way. And we'll talk a little bit about the inspections, a little bit about maintenance, because Neil's going to talk more about that in his section, and then the agreement. Next slide, Neil. Okay, so as part of our program, we have internal inspections by city staff and then consultant-led inspections. So we do internal inspections quarterly to look for any things that have popped up, any maintenance needs, check on the structures themselves and the plants. And then for regulatory devices, we have a consultant go out, a PE or landscape architect, and review the device for functionality, make sure it's meeting all the regulatory requirements so that the device can be certified. Next slide, Neil. And then just a little bit about maintenance. We have a range of maintenance activities that we do, anything from routine, like, hey, we need to pick up the trash, to heavy maintenance, like replacing riprap or plantings, rehab of certain components of GSI, or even replacement if needed at the end of the life cycle. So we have different types of maintenance that need to be done that kind of run the gamut. Next slide, Neil. And we have different ways of doing that. So we have the GSI maintenance crew, which Neil leads, and that's really our preferred option for getting work done. We can also contract out the labor, so we have a contractor available. We have our stormwater maintenance staff and transportation who help out when called upon, and our asset management staff. So this team, or this approach, covers a lot of different maintenance on devices for a lot of different departments, including parks. And because of that, since we are funding this inspection and maintenance, we have a keen interest on a quality device. So one that meets all the project goals, and we know the goals can be complicated. It could be regulatory requirements, water quality benefits, reduce urban heat, an amenity for the community, and we want it easy to maintain. So that's a lot you have to balance during the project. So to assist with this, we have developed service level agreements between Raleigh Stormwater and other city departments. And these agreements say, hey, we'll do all the inspection and maintenance as long as we can follow kind of this guidebook of here's the best practices for planning, design, and construction. So we can all get this product at the end that meets all your goals and that's easy to maintain. Next slide, please. Okay, so the service level agreement outlines the best practices during the project lifecycle. And kind of the old philosophy was, hey, well, asset management starts after construction. But we all know, through experience, like asset management really starts in planning. So what the service level agreement does is kind of outline, here's some best practices from planning, design, construction, warranty, and ways that stormwater can assist during these different phases. So in the planning phase, Sally's team brings expertise in siting and concept design. In the design phase, hey, we're saying use all our standard details and specs that have been vetted by our maintenance staff who are out there looking at how things perform, and then their feedback is incorporated back into those details. And during construction, keeping stormwater in the loop so we can close out the project, get the O&M manual, planting plan, and all that stuff you need at the end of the project. And we know when the warranty period starts, because sometimes it makes more sense for the GSI crew to step in during the warranty period, especially if it's in a highly visible park area where we may want extra work and care to be done. So that's what the service level agreement outlines. Next slide, please. But the real value is the continuous improvement of processes. So we didn't want this to be the agreement that everyone signed and stuck in a drawer and sat there for 10 years. So what we're working into this is an annual review collaboratively with other departments. Hey, how are we doing? How are these processes working? Is there anything that we can improve? And get that feedback back into the agreement so we're constantly monitoring, getting feedback, and making better decisions. And now I'll turn it over to Neil to talk more about maintenance.
Thanks, Barbara. Hey, everybody, Neil Weisenbaker here. I'm the new operations superintendent for GSI maintenance with our parks department in partnership with Stormwater. And the way that I got to know Stormwater from the beginning was through these design charrettes that they hosted with our parks maintenance staff and our transportation staff. And that was a really nice sort of olive branch, if you will, to understanding better, well, what are your needs in terms of planting designs? And because we all know that everything's not better homes and gardens out there, right? And there's no team of dwarfs to take care of, the 7 dwarfs to come and take care of all these green stormwater infrastructure devices in the city. It actually takes strategy and thought into making devices that can be maintained. And so that was my first introduction into working with them, was we were helping to design planting pallets that we could use in different settings. And that's what this design charrette slide shows us.
Oh, Neil, I think you muted yourself on accident.
Thank you. Maybe it wasn't an accident. um, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Um, And so I came from the parks maintenance world where we were working with stormwater to do these planting designs. But then as far as our maintenance goes, the service level agreement, we entered all of our labor, materials, and equipment into a work order system called CityWorks, which we could then use to develop reports. And these reports we would then give back to stormwater, and they would fund us for our maintenance work that we were doing on the GSI in parks. So that's a little bit of how that system worked. And then that evolved in early 2025. I think we were sitting at uh, our annual staff meeting around Christmas time um, and we started saying, okay, what would a stormwater maintenance crew cost? How many people would we need? How many devices could we manage? What types of devices? And we kind of did this back of the envelope calculations in a course of a few hours. And we came up with this initial crew that then we presented and were able to get funded through the stormwater department in parks. So we formed in early 2025. We hired 4 full-time staff. So we've been in action for a year now. In that time, we've completed about 500 work orders and maintained around 40 devices. This is our team here. We're cleaning out we're cleaning out a forebay that's clogged with vegetation because this work has to get done, and who better to do it, right? Um, But the story I like to tell though is that we bring being in a parks team setting, and we have been for a number of years, we bring different values to stormwater maintenance. And and so not only do we enhance water quality through the maintenance of stormwater devices, that could mean picking out trash, right, or removing invasive species, or uh, removing sediment and that kind of thing. But we also improve habitat. We create pollinator habitat, habitat for birds and other amphibians, and we also benefit the community through our work. And we're in parks. We're sort of geared for that kind of work. We're built around that kind of thing that I think gives us an advantage for GSI and parks. Um, I like this picture because this is a stormwater detention basin. It's planted with native species. It's got children playing in it with a playground. So I think it kind of encompasses all those values in one spot. And it's kind of a proof of concept, if you will. We also bring a lot of other resources to the table in parks where we have specialized equipment like remote controlled slope mowers, and those are that's a tool that not everybody's got lying around, not even contractors. So we're able to use that. But we also bring in aquatic weed maintenance, invasive species management, horticulture expertise, and this concept we call parks maintenance levels. And again, that's sort of what we bring to the table when Stormwater partnered with us, and we've been able to deliver on. Parks maintenance levels is an interesting concept I want to share with you, and it applies to parks specifically and less to GSI, but we'll get there, and I'll just bear with me. But parks maintenance levels are where we identify sites. They could be like the park themselves, or they could be like elements within the park. So here's a picture of a park that we have, Anderson Point. And within that area, we have got a level 2 site. Those are the blue polygons. And level 2s are maintained once per week. They're typically like a ball fields or community centers, places where you need a little higher maintenance. Maybe it's an event lawn or something like that. And so those level 2 sites are picked out within our CityWorks program. Our level 3 sites are, I'll say that level 1, just back up a minute, that level 1 is our staffed facilities. So that may be like an amusement park where maintenance is on staff, on site every day. But level 3 is like 90% of all of our parks we go to every 2 weeks, and that's the majority of our land. Level 4, we do once per month. That'd be like a greenway where we cut the grass every 4 months. I mean, every 4 weeks, excuse me. Um, Level 5 would be a once per year maintenance, so like a meadow, for example. And you can see here in Anderson Point, we have a lot of this orange area, and that'll be maintained as a meadow, and that gets cut back once a year. Level 6 would be like maybe the woods or an unmaintained area, although we still do invasive species removal in those locations. So we bring these concepts to the table when it comes to maintenance, and then from those concepts, we can start to spell out maintenance plans. And so, like, this would be like a maintenance plan for a bioretention device. And we're looking at the different elements of that bioretention device, what the tasks are, who would be responsible for that, what the interval of that maintenance would be, and then sort of what the expectations are. And so I can use this document, which is like a maintenance plan, to come up with an agreement with our partners in parks, because I'm a funded entity by stormwater within parks, but I still have to organize and coordinate with my parks partners who are also maintaining those sites. So that's how we sort of spell out who does what and where. Another thing that we bring to the table is horticulture expertise. And this is something really unique to Raleigh that I want to share. And that is that we always had this team of people within parks called the gardeners. And the gardeners are these folks that, maybe they have a 4-year degree, maybe not, but they know how to identify plants. They have a lot of experience when it comes to plants, and they really bring a lot of expertise to the table. And a lot of cities don't have this, and so we feel really lucky. We actually even have a dedicated horticulturist and a greenhouse facility to raise our own plants. So Raleigh, I think, was really ahead of the curve um, from early on. Like, it dated back to like the 70s. Another thing about our gardening staff, our natural resources and park specialists, as they're known, is that they're certified pesticide applicators, and that's a big part of who they are in terms of being able to apply pesticides on public property safely, and both safely to themselves and the public, but also in an environmentally friendly way. Our pesticide applicators have an ornamental and turf license as well as aquatic license in our GSI maintenance group. They may be a certified arborist through the International Society of Arboriculture. They may be a certified plant professional. And all of our staff have stormwater control measure inspection and maintenance certificates as well. So we think it's really important to boost the credentials of our staff in stormwater maintenance so that we can deliver the best product in the most professional manner. And it enables us to do these things that is really hard to do without that kind of team, such as like meadow management and pollinator habitat. That's hard to get a contractor to be able to do that. And so we're able to deliver that skill set to be able to pull this off. The little word cloud over there was a word cloud that was generated from feedback when people visited these sites. They could put in they put their phone on one of these stands here and take a picture of the site over time, and then they plug in little words, and you can kind of see what is important to the public when they come to our GSI sites. And so we know that being able to do things like meadow management and pollinator habitat is valuable to the public, and so that's really important for us. In addition to the expertise we bring to the table, we also enhance habitat. So we work with our partners. This is our stream bank repair specialist in the stormwater group, Dominic Smalls, and we do stream bank repair and as well, and create habitat and increase ecosystem functionality through these efforts. And I know these are big words and they seem very idealistic, But sure enough, we pulled a little crayfish out of here, and there's proof. There's the crayfish that Sarah's holding. So it works. And maybe we'll find marbled salamanders in our GSI devices over on the Peterson Street linear bioretentions. And so we're just, we want to both do green stormwater infrastructure maintenance, but at the same time, we want to enhance habitat and have sort of natural resource values associated with these devices through our ongoing maintenance. And so our next steps and our hopes for increasing habitat may be to start to establish what some metrics might be to say, what is our baseline invertebrate counts, for example, or maybe we could do a BioBlitz on some of our GSI and start to learn about how our maintenance is affecting habitat. And the last goal of our operation is community engagement. And we might partner with a group such as Urban Sustainable Solutions to do workforce development opportunities. These are high school kids that are paid to come work with us and learn about GSI maintenance and what it takes. So we've hosted 5 cohorts this past year. We've had 5 field days with 135 students and 27 teachers. We hope to open up opportunities where these students can now start to work with us on an ongoing basis to learn the skills to become maintainers of GSI, but also maybe we can enhance GSI across our community that way. These gals were just so excited to get this tree in the ground. It was really hard dirt, so I'm very proud of them for that work. We also partner with groups like Partners for Environmental Justice in Southeast Raleigh. They focus only in one watershed to enhance the watershed. And so anywhere we have GSI in their watershed, we engage with them to do maintenance tasks. We have a regularly occurring group. We've had about 90 participants so far to maintain GSI in that watershed. This was a really hot event we had last week. It was very hot temperature-wise. So with that, I would like to say that concludes my presentation. We're open to talking and questions. And here's our contact information should you need to get in touch with us. And very much appreciate the opportunity to share.